Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Did you see that moment yesterday when the big guy was with Indian Prime Minister Modi, and
they started playing the Indian national anthem?
He put his hand over his heart, and then was listening. And then about 30 seconds in, he slowly started to remove it from, and then put his hand aside. Finally figured it out.
Talking to him in his ear to say, "Hey, psst, put your hand down."
Right.
It's not our national anthem. You're pledging allegiance to the wrong country.
Yeah, well, it can happen when Leslie Nielsen is your president. By the way, that's something that he would have done at 29. So I don't want to hear any of this senility thing. He's a dope. He's not the senility thing. He's just a dope. He's just a slower dope at 80 than he was at 29 when he arrived at the Senate. Okay?
For real. This isn't a joke. I mean, his lines are so cliche and getting old.
Well, the president was trying to figure out to which country he pledges allegiance. On the other side of the hill, Jason Smith, Republican from Missouri, who's the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, was releasing transcripts of testimony provided to that committee by IRS whistleblowers in the wake of the Hunter Biden sweetheart plea agreement. And very interesting things he had to recount, did Representative Smith, per the testimony contained in the transcripts of those IRS whistleblowers. Don't blame the IRS, and don't blame U.S. Attorney for the state of Delaware, David Weiss. It appears, according to the whistleblowers at least, because the IRS recommended felony charges against Hunter.
The testimony we released today shows the IRS recommended charges against Hunter Biden that included attempt to evade or defeat tax, a felony, fraud or false statements, a felony, and willful failure to file returns, supply information, or pay tax. These tax crimes cover an estimated $2.2 million in unreported tax on global income streams to Mr. Biden and his associates from Ukraine, Romania, and China, totaling $17.3 million from 2014 to 2019. Mr. Biden personally received $8.3 million.
And that doesn't even include the payments made to prostitutes and sex clubs that he tried to deduct as business expenses. So the IRS wanted felony charges, and David Weiss, the U.S. attorney in question, apparently was interested in pursuing said charges at the recommendation of the IRS, but something got in the way, again, according to whistleblower testimony. Somebody might want to ask David Weiss about what you're about to hear. Might want to ask Merrick Garland about what you're about to hear.
Testimony shows that U.S. Attorney of Delaware David Weiss tried to bring charges in the District of Columbia around March of 2022 and was denied. Weiss sought special counsel status from the DOJ in the spring of 2022 and was once again denied. Weiss sought to bring charges in the Central District of California in the fall of 2022 and had that request denied in January of 2023. Yet U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland told Congress that Weiss had all the authority necessary to pursue the charges. Well, which is it?
And that doesn't even include an additional piece of testimony from these IRS whistleblowers that is going to be difficult to ignore, difficult to say that's a dumb question. A WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden to Henry Zhao, a Chinese communist-connected business dude, saying what?
Well, he said, "I'm sitting here with my father, and I'd like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled." He texted this July 30th, 2017. "Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand, and now means tonight. And Z, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Shang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows, and my ability to hold a grudge that you will regret not following my direction. I'm sitting here waiting for the call with my father.
And then he said, I'm going to smoke a crack pipe and do some blow art. And when I get back, that money better be there.
He had already given him $100,000 for what work, we don't know, but it's his name was Henry Zhao, and he's the executive at that Chinese company.
And
Unbelievable.
remember, the pat answer is that the big guy had no idea. He had no look into whatever Hunter Biden, baby boy Hunter Biden, was doing with respect to business dealings in countries around the globe. For more on this, please be joined by John Hinderaker, president of the Center of the American Experiment, contributor to Powerline, powerlineblog.com. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be with you, Dan.
What's your handle on these latest developments per Jason Smith?
Well, it is slowly unraveling, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of interesting. If you look at polls, I think I've seen polls indicating that about 60% of the public says, Joe Biden was taking bribes from foreign interests and foreign governments. So, they haven't done a very good job of keeping the lid on this really unbelievable scandal. And it seems to me that it's starting to unravel more here. They tried to keep the lid on it by having Hunter plead guilty to minor offenses that have nothing to do with the millions that he got from these overseas interests and that Joe got. That's the first thing, of course, from the overseas interests. And yet it looks as though the U.S. attorney was nibbling around and was going to pursue things that had to do with that money. $8 million, went to Hunter. Okay, well, where'd the rest of it go? So that apparently was too dangerous, and it got stepped on. But they can't keep the lid on a lifetime of corruption, which is what we're talking about here with Joe Biden. And that WhatsApp message, I saw that last night. I mean, that is a smoking gun. It really is, Amy. I mean, you read that and it's okay. It's really all over for Joe Biden.
Well, he's not going to court until Hunter Biden's not going to court until July 27th. So is there a possibility that they can up some charges knowing this new information?
I doubt it. I mean, look, the fix is in. The fix is obviously in, and it comes from Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. I mean, it's kind of a joke. I don't know that the legal proceedings at this point matter all that much. I think that enough has come out, and enough is going to continue to come out. These House committees are looking into all this stuff. They're finding more stuff. They're going to be putting out reports and having press conferences. Most people already believe that Joe Biden is a crook, and it's only going to get worse. And I think, I wrote on Powerline yesterday about a big fact check of Joe Biden by none other than CNN. Every single thing he says about guns is wrong. Stuff he says about energy is wrong. Stuff he says about Africa is wrong. Why are they all of a sudden fact-checking Joe Biden at CNN, almost as if he was Donald Trump,
Well,
I think the answer is he's on his way out the door. They're laying the foundation to ease him out.
So we've been waiting for this for a while. When are they going to move on him? And the window is closing. If you don't want him to be the nominee, if everybody's going to take the posture that Gavin Newsom and other interested parties have taken, we support Biden, done a great job until they decide he hasn't, you think this is finally the moment and they're going to move him out? And how do they, if they do, how do they work around not moving Kamala in, because that can't work?
Well, here's my theory. They're not going to have him leave office prematurely, because that would make Kamala the president, and then they're stuck with her, right?
Yeah,
so my theory is that this whole thing is. And by the way, Gavin Newsom has been sounding more moderate lately.
Yes,
he was on Fox News. Yep.
Yeah, he's trying to talk like a moderate Democrat. So my theory is that they've got it planned, and at the appropriate moment, which I think is going to be around when the primaries are about to begin, early next year, February or something in that time frame, Joe Biden is going to go on television and he's going to give a tearjerker of a speech in which he says that it had always been his intention to run for a second term. He always thought he was physically up to it. His health was good. But just in the last few weeks, he's suffered some reversals in his health, and he's taken a hard look at it. And he's decided that much as he hates to retire for the good of the American people, he is not going to seek a second term.
It's the anti-checker speech. Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. No, that, and people say, "Oh, Joe,
Don't do it.
Yeah, please
Oh,
run,
no.
Joe.
No.
No, I can't. I won't. LBJ, right? If nominated, right? Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
And meanwhile, Gavin Newsom is going to be raising money like mad. And a day after Joe Biden gives that speech, Gavin Newsom files at all these primaries, and he catches Kamala flat-footed, and the whole party gets behind him, and they make Gavin Newsom the nominee. That's my theory about how this is going.
Well, then who would Gavin Newsom's running mate be?
Oh, anyone but
Hypothetically
Kamala.
speaking. Right.
Yeah.
No, she'd be done. She'd take, she wants to go spend more time.
I don't know.
with her family.
Ilhan Omar? Ilhan Omar?
Yeah, of course. That'd be a good pick. Yeah, one of the socialist Spice Girls. That'd be that'd be a good play.
That'd be good.
Well, so now on the other side, since we're talking POTUS politics here, I mean, do you see any path available to Ron DeSantis at this moment?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you?
National primary polls don't mean anything. They don't mean.
Well, take a look at the state
anything.
polls, though, too.
Well, you look at the state polls, but the campaign hasn't begun yet. Primary polling is extremely volatile. General election polling isn't, because most of us have got our minds made up. But primary polling. Are you old enough to remember when Ed Muskie had the Democratic nomination sewed up?
I've read about it.
And then he cried, I mean, wasn't that big a
doesn't
deal?
have
And
a
all of a
start
sudden, whammo, no Ed Muskie. And then just a few years ago, a few cycles ago, Howard Dean. Howard Dean
Yeah,
is the
but this-
man. He's the front runner.
But John, let me stop you there. This is so much different. None of those guys had the unyieldingly loyal base that a Donald Trump brings to the table. None of those guys, obviously, it's never happened, were under indictment and could position themselves to run against the bête noire of the Republican Party, the Leviathan inside the Beltway right now. And Trump has at least one, if not two more possible indictments to come. There's no oxygen for anybody else right now.
Well, let's see. The only thing that matters is what the caucus goers in Iowa think when the time comes. Not today, when the time comes. What the voters in New Hampshire think when the time comes. What the voters in South Carolina think. So I think it is way too early to be jumping to any conclusion.
Well, let me ask you
how that's going to go.
Okay, that's fair, but let me ask you something else then. Let me ask you a different way. What's your assessment of Ron DeSantis' rollout over the first 6 weeks?
I think it's been fine.
Okay. All right.
I think it's been fine. He's got a strong emphasis on his record as governor of Florida. He's covering a lot of territory. He's drawing big, enthusiastic crowds. No, I think it's been fine. I mean, if you want to talk about the last 6 weeks, I would say Ron DeSantis has definitely had a better last 6 weeks than Donald Trump, right? I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think this stirs and powers up his base.
I mean,
Every indictment, every lawsuit against him upsets people.
Well, even the head-to-head polling, which is the electability argument, is one of the key arguments for DeSantis or any other challenger to make. If you want to beat Biden, we can't have Trump. But the problem is right now the polling has Trump doing as well, if not better, than DeSantis and everybody else against Biden.
Well, let's see how it plays out. I mean, I understand that.
I hear you. I hear you.
I don't believe it. There's no doubt that there's a hardcore that's maybe 25% or something of the GOP that will sink or swim with Donald Trump, at least as long as he's winning. If he loses the first couple of primaries, then I think that starts to change pretty fast. But I think most Republicans do not want to nominate a candidate who's going to be weighed down with a whole series of criminal indictments and sordid lawsuits, and those aren't Trump's only problems. I mean, there's other questions that a lot of us have about Trump, his judgment, his obsession with 2020, his egomania. So let's let the process play out. I could be wrong,
and you don't see. No, so could I. I mean, you don't see the entrance of so many candidates into the race as a vote of no confidence in DeSantis as the alternative?
No, I don't. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people jump. I mean, Doug Burgum jumped into the race. What's his strategy? I don't know.
I don't know either.
There are a lot of people. There's a lot of reasons why people do that. They're thinking about a future cycle. They're thinking about the vice presidential nod. They've got a big ego and they want to get famous. Here again, I think, and your point is well taken. Look, there is a risk that Trump gets, 30 or 35%, but nobody else gets more than 20. I mean, that is a risk. But here again, I think we kind of have to let the process start playing itself out and see what happens.
John Hinderaker, President and Center of the American Experiment, contributor PowerlineBlog.com as well, daily must reading. John, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Mick McDonald, co-founder of Configure One, the global leader in configure, price, and quote software for manufacturers, and a new customer of Signature Bank. Configure One recently came to Signature Bank for a loan under the Paycheck Protection Program after our previous business bank of 20 years left us out in the cold. When I called Signature, I worked directly with one of the founders of the bank, who assured me that my application would be submitted immediately. 1 week later, my loan was approved and funded, and I moved my entire banking relationship to Signature. Signature Bank is incredibly responsive, fully transparent, and a great partner for my business.
Signature Bank is looking for their next success story. To learn more about turning your business vision into reality, visit signaturebank.bank. Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
When this is the sound of a waterfall in nature, there's no cause for concern. But when it's the sound of water gushing through your living room ceiling because a pipe bursts inside the wall, there's reason to panic unless you pick up the phone and call 1-800-SERVPRO. Only the cleanup and restoration specialists at ServPro can help make fire and water damage like it never even happened. So make the call to 1-800-SERVPRO at the first sign of water damage. Franchises are independently owned.